Whew. Today marks 2 years since the disastrous U.S. troop withdrawal from Kabul, bringing an end to a war that spanned nearly 2 decades. Joining us now is Jake Auchincloss, Democratic Congressman of Massachusetts and a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. Thank you so much for joining us. As of April of this year, about 152,000 special immigrant visa applicants remain stuck in Afghanistan. This SIV program has long been debated on the Hill that if it's not appropriately funded, it just doesn't work. Does Congress have a responsibility to act on behalf of these people that the U.S. seemingly left behind?
Yes, Congress has a responsibility to act. We need to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act, and we need to fund the necessary measures to ensure that everybody who served the U.S. military while we were there for 20 years and those whose lives are imminently at risk from Taliban reprisal are able to repatriate here to the United States and build lives in their adopted homeland.
We've had, obviously, a difficult conversation over the past couple of years here, Congressman, about how this went, how it could have gone. And you spoke with us 2 years ago when it happened. You became known as a Fox whisperer at one point, defending the administration on this, as someone who actually fought in the war in Afghanistan. When you think back to the difficult withdrawal 2 years later, was it still the right move?
Yes, unquestionably. 2 years ago, President Biden had the wisdom, he had the integrity to end a failed forever war. 3 previous presidents had claimed they were going to do it. Only this president actually carried through and told the hard truth to the American people. Right now, 2 years later, U.S. foreign policy headlines are that we are supporting Ukraine on the front lines of the free world as they fight back against Russia, and we're cratering Russia's conventional military capacity. We are outcompeting the Chinese economy for the first time in 2 decades, and we are tightening our Indo-Pacific alliances with Korea, with Japan, with Australia, with the Philippines. These are the headlines we have today. The headlines we could have had President Biden made a different decision, would be U.S. Marines have another firefight in southern Helmand province with the Taliban, because that's what we would be doing. We would be in a 3rd decade spilling blood and treasure in a war without strategic value to the United States and with no clear political endgame.
What do you make of the state of affairs right now? Obviously, you understand Afghanistan very well. I was reading an article this morning that the Taliban is doing a deal with Huawei in China to set up cameras, basically what they're saying to track terrorists and militants, but I imagine also, given the Taliban's track record over the years, to also for them to spy on Afghans, especially men and women. Do you see that China is making a play into Afghanistan and filling this vacuum given the U.S. left?
It's been a tale of 2 Talibans in the last 2 years. I think on the one hand, the Taliban have been reasonably effective in counterterrorism operations. They actually share a lot of U.S. and Western interests in keeping ISIS-K at bay and have been reasonably responsive to Western needs to have signals and human intelligence about counterterrorism threats. And we saw that could be effective with the over-the-horizon strike on a terrorist leader last year by the administration. On the other hand, the Taliban have been horrendous on the rights of women and girls, and in general, in trying to advance the socioeconomic development that the United States was able to shepherd through over the last 20 years, particularly with literacy for girls. And so the United States is going to have to use a carrot and stick approach, where we are working on economic development issues, particularly mining and access to rare earth elements and copper and iron, in a constructive way with Afghanistan, but also holding them to account to allow all people there complete freedom of opportunity.
Congressman, I want to ask you about Mark Schmitz. He's the father of Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, who died in the blast at Abbey Gate 2 years ago. Mark Schmitz testified, if I can use that term, while Congress is out of session on Capitol Hill yesterday. It was a roundtable that was put forth by the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And he had some very difficult words for President Biden. He used expletives. It was an emotional statement, and it was one that we were all glued to here. He went out of his way to say, he talked about meeting the president at Dover when his son's remains came back to this country, and said, our so-called leader cannot even seem to utter their names in public. This is very difficult stuff, Congressman. What would you say to the parent or a family member of a Marine who died that day?
It's a tragedy, and my heart breaks for the gold-starred families, both for those on that day and for those over the last 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, as their sons and daughters fought for American freedom and democracy. I know that the Secretary of State, I know that the President takes personally the withdrawal and those who did not come home. And for that reason, Secretary Blinken has been cooperating with Chairman McCall on the House Foreign Affairs Committee to understand what happened with that withdrawal and to examine each decision made. It's a very typical after-action review that the military conducts for missions big and small. And we need to do that for the full 20 years of decision-making, because the American people are owed an accountable and transparent set of facts about who knew what, when, and why over the last 20 years of really failed national security decision-making about Afghanistan. This president ensured that no more Marines or soldiers would die in the years ahead of us because he finally had the courage, or he had the courage to finally tell the American people the truth about this war.
I appreciate your insights today. Congressman Jake Auchincloss with us from Massachusetts. Thanks for joining, and thank you for your service. Coming up, we'll